to introduce the Tower Crown with your Oscar voice.
Welcome to the Tower. Welcome to the
Go sit down.
WatchTower.
Go sit down over there for a little while.
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll.
Then I
3, 2, 1, go.
Go.
Welcome back to the WatchTower Podcast, a new podcast on Tower Productions' new podcasting network, the Towercast Network. If you haven't yet, make sure to check out the Towercast Network on Instagram. We're going to be posting all of the updates for this podcast and for the Towercast podcast on that forum. But today we're here because we're film nerds and we love cinema, and we're just going to geek out on cinema for an hour or two. How about it? I'm here to introduce my lovely panel. Austin Young in there.
Hey, how's it going?
Austin Young has a pretty cool new soundboard, so if you hear random sounds, don't be alarmed. It's just Austin having fun while we geek out.
The sound of God
Wow.
talking to us.
There it is. Owen Wilson. All right, well, how do we get Owen Wilson on the show? What the fuck's going on
Just
here?
for that 1 second, dude, then you have to bounce it.
Oh, okay, yeah. We got John Eric Castro, the lovely actor, giving us the acting perspective here.
Gabarachi, tutti frutti.
Oh,
Is that racist?
Probably not. Or it is.
my other co-host, Mr. Christian Yokomoto Medina.
Oh, hello, fellows and villains.
Yoko. We have Mr. Michael DeLao. He looks
Jared.
John Lennon over there.
John Lennon. It's a John Lennon Ozzy Osbourne hybrid today.
All right.
Ugly cousin more, but okay.
Hello.
We have a special guest today, Mr. Jonathan Gonzalez of JonGon Productions himself.
Woo! Wow!
Hello, glad to be back.
Very fitting to have Mr. Jonathan on the show today because he's I've known Jonathan for a long time. I want to. We either met at a film festival or in college or in both, but since I've known him, his kind of evolution in not only in filmmaking but in cinema and watching cinema and appreciating cinema has evolved. And more recently, I think I can say, Jonathan, you've been falling in love with foreign cinema, which is why it's interesting to have you on the show today. You're a big Three Amigos fan, which is Mexican cinema, but you're starting to get into much more world cinema, which is
We're talking about the Steve Martin Three Amigos, or
yeah, absolutely.
Yes, you set up a motherless goat.
Chevy Chase. I'm obsessed with Chevy Chase right now, by the way. I just want to say I don't know why. I know he's an asshole, but I
heard
him.
that he's hard to work with, dude. Like
Yeah.
he just works at his own time.
Yeah, he's weird.
crazy.
But I love the vacation films, dude. I just can't get enough of the vacation
They're
films.
classics.
I
They're
just-
classics. You got to go and watch them.
You got to pick one. Which one?
You know what? I love European
Community.
vacation, dude. European vacation is my
Oh,
jam.
really?
European
I
is my
like
jam. Vegas is fun. Vegas is fun.
I like
but
the crazy uncle, dude.
yeah. Uncle Eddie or whatever. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
I like the cameo. What's the rich Vegas guy's name? Mr. Las Vegas. I think they
Oh
call
yeah,
him.
the guy with the
yeah.
wife, right?
Yeah.
John-
No, it's Wayne Newton. Wayne
Wait,
Newton.
there we go.
Fun fact: when we were in Vegas, Castro and Austin and my wife Sandra and Eric and I, we went to Vegas for Sandra's birthday one year, and we were gonna visit the Wayne Newton house, and all of us were like, like what the fuck? Like, this is. I think we ended up going to a Beatles Cirque du Soleil show instead, because obviously.
Because
Um,
Edo Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Anyways,
just got Mafia Museum or some shit.
you know what? I wanted to go to the Neon Museum, dude. I really wanted to, and nobody else wanted to.
What
And
the hell is the
I,
Neon Museum?
I told
Was
you,
there where
there's
they
like,
have the signs and all that, right?
yeah, it's where they have the old Vegas
That's
neon signs,
awesome.
like all over it. Like,
Oh, like the
Oh.
old ones.
and I mentioned it to like Astro and Austin and everybody, and they're like,
You
no.
should have taken me.
I don't miss
Oh,
the
you hate me.
Bible. I was hungover.
Yeah.
I missed out on that invitation.
Castro
I don't know
had a
where-
bad time at Vegas.
Yeah, I
He really
remember
did.
half of that trip. Okay, so
Yeah.
Jesus.
Anyways, thank you for joining us, Jonathan. We're talking about a very special film. It was my kind of suggestion today, and forgive. We kind of determined our flow for this podcast, which is fun. We're talking about it in a meeting the other day, where it's like I bring all the pretentious classic cinema films. Castro brings the fun, but also action-based fun stuff. Yeah, like the one he's pointing at. And then Austin will bring kind of the more technologically advanced suggestions that he likes to explore. Yokomoto has like the in-depth cinema horror stuff that we don't really see, and then the Lao will have like the hidden gems. So be prepared for a pretentious episode today. I'm sorry, that's just what I've been determined as apparently.
Yes.
Yeah, I see Jonathan celebrating. Thank you.
That's me in general, like with films. So if anybody's like, what kind of film do you represent? Yes. Like
Yes.
to all of those.
Yeah. No, but you know what? I should preface this by saying that we're gonna be including a lot more quote unquote audience suggestions. So make sure to suggest them. We're always happy to bring them in. I know Castro and I, for the longest time since we started this podcast, we've been wanting to do like a hood movie series where we bring in like the How Highs and Fridays.
Friday, Boys in the Hood.
Yeah, we want to do that, man. Like the hood comedies. It's
Jonathan, you're about that, dude? You like those type of films?
I grew up watching those, dude. I love those films. My dad showed it to me when I was a kid. Okay.
Awesome.
If we could do like Half Baked and How High, like please, man.
And Dave Chappelle's funny on stand up but not in movies.
What Half Baked is
that one.
awesome.
Or comedians in general are funnier on stage
Oh, absolutely.
than in their movies.
But Half Baked is awesome. It's a hidden gem, man. It's so good. Anyways, yeah, so we're gonna bring in more different variety of stuff. So if you have something you want to suggest, make sure and send it over. Today, however, we're talking about I have I'm the weird guy that has a list of favorite films of all time, and some people can manage it, some people can't. We had this whole conversation about how it's tough to do, but
I'm struggling.
It's currently sitting at like number 5 of my favorite all time
Really?
films.
Yeah.
When was this?
I can definitely see that.
The film we're doing
88.
today.
88.
We
looked it up yesterday.
It's not that old then.
Yeah. We're doing, I hope I'm pronouncing this name right, Giuseppe Tornatore's Cinema Paradiso. Obviously, very Italian name, very Italian director, very Italian film. This is an Italian film that was introduced to me by a fellow filmmaker, film lover of ours. His name's Luis Anchondo from TriCast Pictures, a friend of ours. He introduced this picture to me. I was like, well, Cinema Paradiso, what is that? He's like, dude, let's just watch it. We screened it. He screened it for me in Austin, and I instantly fell in love. I've seen it a dozen times at least since, and I've only saw it maybe 3 years ago.
Oh, really?
So I love this picture, man, and it encapsulates everything about cinema and the appreciation for cinema and how it takes place in this one little Italian town, but it's so universal for people who love going to the movies and love cinema and even filmmaking, because as we know, our hero becomes a filmmaker at the end of it all. So I think I told Delao and Austin we were screening it again yesterday virtually. It's on HBO Max, by the way, so make sure to check it out. I was telling him that this is like my spirit animal of a film, if that makes any sense.
There's something about Carlos's films that like he loves any film that shows people watching films. I don't know why.
I saw a lot of Hugo on this one.
Here's my theory. Carlos is able to achieve his maximum by watching a film that watches a film, because then he can watch 2 films at one time.
How meta
brain.
is this?
So does that mean scary movies on your list then?
Yeah.
Well, the scary movie, it inspired my trail as a filmmaker, Jonathan. Let me tell you. No.
Exactly.
Hey,
Why do you think
I
I take fried chicken to the movie theaters? No, I'm kidding.
Oh, God.
But no, yeah, it's right. You're right, guys. I see a lot of Hugo in this, right? But it's reverse. This was made in '88. I see a lot of Cinema Paradiso and Hugo, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's
Scorsese's an Italian filmmaker. He loves Italian filmmakers. This is his jam. I haven't done any research on if he's commented on this film, but I'm sure he's a fan. I don't doubt that he's a fan on this film.
It would definitely be like on his list.
Kid hitting, man. Is that normal over there?
What?
All the
I mean, it was back in like what?
Oh yeah.
I didn't have that. Like I could cuss that, but I never got hit in like in the middle of.
I mean, they were smoking in the theater. This was
no. Well, think about this though. Think about this. This was made in '88, but it was based in the '50s. You know,
exactly.
So yeah,
and in Italy.
And in Italy, yeah. So it's different. Yeah, different times, different culture.
I saw like, wow, they're very
because they talk about like the Stalin regime rising and stuff like that, right? At that point.
Yeah.
Because I mean, just based on what you're saying, the time period alone is like kind of saying that, okay, so this is after World War II had just happened, and so this is also in Italy. right? So
Yeah, I want to say there was a war going on. I don't know which war was going on during his like because he did his army training and stuff and went off to the military, do his military service. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's post-war Italy to the point where you even see the destruction of the little town because
I don't know the war's still going on. Like, I mean, we have to kind of like fact check it and go back, but
I should
I
have
know
done that.
that.
Yeah.
No, I know in other countries, there's like a mandatory service you have to do at a certain age. That basically, once you hit that age, you have to go into it. Thank you, Castro. No, but you have to go into it, and
you, dude.
you go into it. I think like Turkey does it. I don't know what other kind of Middle Eastern or European countries also do it, but there's like a forced service thing. So I think that's what was happening, but that's why you didn't see him going through like war and all that kind of stuff.
Well, okay, so
I know what you mean. I think El Salvador used to do that too.
So I mean, let's talk about the film. We're talking about if you haven't seen it, again, go watch the film and then come listen to the podcast. But this film is about a kid who loves going to the movies so much so that he spends like the grocery money, his mom's grocery money, on just going to see a film. And it reminds me of stories I've heard of my uncles and my dad of like they would do that, but for arcade games. You know, les daban el dinero para las tortillas, and they'd go. So it kind of reminds me of like, oh well, if the kid's not spending it on that or on a toy or something, he's spending it on an experience of going to see a film. And this kid in particular kind of develops this friendship with the projectionist of the Cinema Paradiso, which is the name of the theater in their local town.
He's my favorite character, man. I know the little kid, but he's my favorite character. Man.
He's a favorite, man. Yeah, he's a favorite.
Heart, you know.
He's a favorite. And I think it's also interesting that the kid, it's kind of like Moonlight. You see the 3 different iterations of this character. So you can't really favor one, right? I mean, or you can favor one, I should say. It's the kid, the teenager / young adult, and then you see the older man.
Yeah.
But Alfredo, the character you're talking about, he's the same guy. Like you get to see him grow old.
And he gives them a little lecture of why you don't want to do this. This is you're a slave to this machine. But he's just like, this is my path.
But he sees it.
Yeah.
He sees that he's got something in him. Yeah. So that's what this film is about. Again, made in 1988. This film was kind of picked up in the U.S. by Miramax when Miramax was big and prominent. And that's why we get to see it here in the States and why it has a US version and stuff like that. But this film was I think it showed a revolution of world cinema at the time, because cinema at the time, movie theaters were your go-to, man. If you didn't have a movie theater in your town, you weren't doing anything. It was really pre-war and post-war. Going to the cinema was key, and that you kind of see that in Hugo too. Once the war is going on, nobody cares because it's the realism of their times, and they don't want to go see a fantasy movie when the reality of their times is horrible. But if it's pre-war and it's post-war, it's like, well, yeah, let's go watch a picture. Let's go watch Clark Gable on the screen, you know. So, I read something which was fascinating to me. By the end of 1956. Italy had 1,700 movie theaters, the most in Europe. So Italy was the one that was really pushing the cinema forward. A lot of people think, yes, German New Wave and French New Wave and all these filmmakers came out of the shadows at that time. But the Italian film market they were the ones consuming the cinema mostly. And it developed some fucking awesome filmmakers, man. Like Federico Fellini, like Roberto Rossellini, obviously Martin Scorsese, Dario Argento, the B horror cinema legend.
Include him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, him and
Mario Bava,
obviously Francis Ford Coppola. All of these people who loved cinema came out of that school, came out of that. So I think it's so essential for that reason, man. Italy has this unspoken kind of history with cinema. It doesn't start and end when Martin Scorsese. He's like the culmination of all these filmmakers that came before him that were Italian. So I'm pretty sure, with the exception
there's a reason why when the people kind of like satirize or like kind of talk about the foreign films that like satirize foreign films, they usually go either French or Italian, because
Yeah.
they were such a prominent force in a language. In a
Anybody
different
who's a
language.
fan of Tarantino and the scene in Glorious Bastards, they do it there. You know, it's about Brad Pitt's character and his kind of troupe in the scene where they have to play Italian filmmakers.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Buongiorno.
yeah, exactly.
Well, I need a little history lesson. What is it about Italy that makes it like?
It's a tribute to it's a tribute to spaghetti westerns, because he takes so much from spaghetti westerns, and since Inglourious Basterds was in itself a western just hidden in World War II, it was just a tribute to that, to the filmmaking knowledge that he has previously.
I mean, to piggyback off of that, anybody who was able to obtain American cinema fell in love with westerns and John Wayne, and
John Ford.
And because of that, yeah, John Ford films and starring, you know, John Wayne and the likes, spaghetti westerns became a big thing. They're called spaghetti westerns because most of them were made in Italy. That's why spaghetti is
I don't know if it's true or not, but I know that, or I've heard that Clint Eastwood wasn't able to make it for American Western films because they said that he just didn't have the right look to him. In fact, build, he didn't have the right build to him, and I think it also had something to do with like the Adam's apple being too like prominent. Wow. That basically they said that you're never going to make it in this market, so he went over to Italy to go and do like Italian films, like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly with Sergio Leone.
Sergio Leone was a staple of Italian cinema, but he made westerns. That was his big thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right, though. I mean, if you've seen, again, Tarantino is almost, I'm not gonna say as much, is almost as much of a film buff as Scorsese. And Tarantino, when you watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, they have a whole section about that, about how American actors were making better money going to Italy to make, you know, Italian spaghetti westerns. And Sergio Leone was obviously, he made Once Upon a Time in the West for a few dollars. The whole the Guy with No Name series, which is Clint Eastwood's trilogy. So that's the big history, Castro. In fact, so much so that there's Italy has a version of Universal Studios / Disneyland or whatever of their own, which is called Cinematrifo or something like that. I'll look up the studio name, but it has one key studio in Italy. It's actually where Scorsese shot and built his set for Gangs of New York, the entire set. Wow. He used the set dresser set for Federico Fellini. So Scorsese got that guy and said, "I'm going to put you in my movies now. You're going to make movies for me now." And they built the entire set for Gangs of New York in Italy, in that studio, in that legendary studio. And now that studio or a portion of it is a theme park. You know, just like our Universal Studios here in the States. That's how much Italians love cinema, and they'll go to that. They'll go to attend this theme park, you know. So there's so much more to go about it, man. And
I knew a couple of those stuff, but yeah, I just wanted a quick little revisit.
Right? When we talk about Italian cinema, we'll have to revisit some more Fellini films, man. I've been on a Fellini binge for a few months, and he's like the epitome of Italian cinema. He's the guy, dude. He's the guy you want to pay attention to. When you think French New Wave and you think Godard, or when you think like these guys that made the genre, Fellini made this neorealism of Italian cinema, and that's the one that's respected the most.
And who did he admire? Who did he?
He admired American filmmakers like Charlie Chaplin, like Buster Keaton. You know, like that's who he was. But also French New Wave people that kind of came before him.
Actually, a lot of Italian filmmakers had their love with American cinema and kind of created their own type of cinema over there because of that.
Exactly. And like on a small tangent, it's kind of nice to see, I guess, the relationship that these filmmakers had back then of like connecting and being inspired by different artists, because we are able to finally see that now kind of actualized with like Parasite and Bong Joon-ho and his films where he says, I was inspired by people like Scorsese. And then now people can say they're inspired by like Bong Joon-ho films, and they're willing to let themselves kind of go more out there as far as exploring.
I hate to stretch this out the most, but this is why I kiss the ground where Scorsese walks on, because he did the Film Foundation. The Film Foundation was an organization that he started with George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, and a couple other filmmakers that that is used to preserve cinema, like to find old film negatives and preserve them. And while doing that, they've preserved stuff from filmmakers all over the world. In fact, if you're a Criterion fan, Scorsese has this thing called World Cinema Project, and where he highlights filmmakers from everywhere, Africa, Italy, Europe. It's everywhere, man.
Nice.
Like he highlights these awesome filmmakers, and he's a big like Agnes Varda supporter.
Giving a
And stuff
fair
like
play to everybody,
yeah, given exactly a fair play, but also like I think his mentality is like, I'm gonna die soon, and if I don't preserve these films for future generations, they're gonna die.
That's love, dude.
And that's
passion.
That's what you have to appreciate.
And then that's how we circle around with Cinema Paradiso. Because,
yes,
I mean, it's all about that especially that love, that kind of infant love towards.
Dude, when the kid is
that's
just
a good word. That's a good
snippets
word.
of the film and then just creating a story.
Yeah.
It reminded me so much of myself with my toys, dude. Like, I know everybody did that, but I give backstories, accents, Just
I was watching a documentary of Tarantino today, and one of the producers says that Tarantino's mom told her a story that that Tarantino would grab his action figures and be like, "No, fuck you, you're dude," like he would curse, and his mom was like, "You can't be using that type of language, Quentin," and he's like, "I'm not using that type of language. They're saying it. It's not me. It's them." So like the imagination of like yeah, exactly. But it's like the imagination of like, no, it's these characters are the ones doing it. That's why, because of the whole controversy of him using the N-word so many times and all that. He really does see cinema that way. Like he sees an equal plate of everybody, and that's kind of his mentality. But anyways, in Cinema Paradiso, you actually see most of the films that they're screening are Italian dubbed, American Italian dubbed films. So you see like Charlie Chaplin films up on the screen.
And I guess before we kind of go in and start breaking down all the scenes and all that, let's just do first reactions from everybody.
Yes.
Just to kind of cover that on.
Yeah, please. I think with the exception of Yokomoto, myself, and Austin, this was the first time everybody else saw it, right? So.
Well, this is my first time also seeing it.
Oh, really? I thought you had seen it before. No, okay. My bad.
Like I always wanted to watch this movie, but I just never gave myself the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Who wants to go first, man? You guys tell me. Let's get it.
Yoko, you're already going on.
It is very interesting watching this movie, especially like for the first time and everything, with the pandemic.
Oh.
Because the fact that we can't go to a movie theater really.
Yeah.
And it's like it took me back to when the times as a kid, going to watch movies and just like experiencing.
Sure.
The community, why one used to watch to go.
Yeah, man, that's a good point.
I felt that, especially that little montage with all the town and all that stuff. It was like,
I don't know if everybody else has had that experience, but it's so weird. I think like when the pandemic first started, or now that it's gone on for a while, watching films or TV, where you see large crowds of people or people having that kind of camaraderie
without a mask.
Yeah, and then like it almost feels weird because that we're so used to right now, we're not able to experience that, but there's such a warmth in it. And I think there's also something that's very unappreciated about it when it was happening. Like I never thought that everybody being around me in the theater was something that I like, was like, oh, this is what's making the experience. But watching this film and seeing how like, well, I mean, the main character is affected, it just reminds you like how much that's important. But it's happening to everybody, man. Anybody who loves cinema, even if you're not a filmmaker and you just love going to the movies, Edgar Wright right now, director of Baby Driver and Shaun of the Dead and all these films. Yeah, small pictures.
Yeah, small independent cinema. No, Edgar Wright on Instagram has been pushing this new issue of Empire magazine. Empire magazine is this big film magazine in the UK.
Hunters, right?
Yeah, and it's basically he got to interview 100 people, 50 of them filmmakers, 50 of them just like film lovers, about their cinema going experiences, the first time they ever went to a cinema or what they miss about the cinema right now with the pandemic. And that issue is dropping like this month. And he says, I just did it because I miss the cinema. I walk by my home theater every day on my walks and I miss it. I stand out there just missing it. And this is Edgar Wright,
Tesla Town a lot doing that. Just
it's happening to everybody, man. Everybody's feeling it. So that's a very interesting perspective, Yoko. I didn't think of it.
Yeah, man.
That's good. That's good.
So what do you think
How
the
about you,
story that
Castro?
kind of
What you
went on?
felt?
Oh, never mind.
Oh, sorry.
Me?
I was just doing first impression. Sorry.
First impressions.
Castro, what about you, man? What caught you about this film, or didn't catch you?
No, well, first of all, I like the kid, man. Like I was saying, I saw a lot of me in the kid, but I also saw a lot of you guys in there. You know, just the passion for films. Like even as a kid,
Yeah.
films was his path. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
like I see with Carlos, with De La O, Yokomoto, Jonathan. But the character that really stood out the most was Alfredo.
Yeah.
It's just he sees this kid, he's getting in trouble, sneaking into the movie.
Yeah.
And he's getting in trouble, but he knows that I gotta teach this kid. You know, it's just. And then he goes blind.
He sees that spark in his eye, right? He sees that flame in him to want to get
No
involved.
pun intended.
Yeah. No pun intended.
But yeah, man, I
about
fell in
you?
love with the story, and then I just watched the ending right now when he's looking at the films with everything in it.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Delau, what about you, man?
I think I remember telling you guys that this film made me angry, and it just made me angry because like I like us as like film watchers, and I guess to the further extent of like film analyzers, like we're like, wow, I liked it, and then we can like kind of break down like all the things we liked about it and all the different elements that made it such a great film. Like, you know, we watched like Tenet recently, and we were talking about that and like all the little breakdowns as far as like story structure and everything. And with this film, it was just one of those where everything works so well that I couldn't stop myself from just enjoying the story and wanting to know what's going to happen next, and seeing that warmth and the care and the realism and the emotions that they're all feeling, that I couldn't like stop and think like, oh, I wonder how they shot that. I wonder how they did this, because I was so just drawn by like the warmth in that story. It's
refreshing, right? It's refreshing that as a filmmaker you don't have to have that part of the brain turned on all the time. You could just enjoy.
In fact, I feel like now when I watch films that aren't like too amazing, like they're maybe I'd probably, you know, give like a 5 or a 6 on like my rating and all that. Those are the films that I like to break down the most, because, you know, I can just kind of like watch it, like I don't really have to pay attention too much, but then I can break down all the things. But then with this one, it drew me in so much where it was like I couldn't do that. It was just like I was so invested in like the story and the character and where they were going and the acting. I was even mentioning to the guys, like a child actor, you know, is always like impossible to work with.
Like middle ground. He was lower than that. He was too young to know how to act, how to react. It was
and he was doing everything like perfectly. I mean, you know, the lines are written, but I mean, you know, he has to remember them. He has to act a certain way. Like I just feel, I mean, I've had one experience working with like a child actor for like a short film, and that whole thing was just. It gave me a newfound respect for whenever I see any child able to give a performance even close to like
you don't have to be as forgiving, because seeing this kid's performance is like, no, dude, there's good child actors out there.
Really. And then, you know, like, I mean, like you said, it's the fact that Alfredo would see the spark in him, and when the way that they filmed it, the way that everything was composed,
the relationship,
you could also see that spark in his eyes, and you could also see this wonder and this magic, and it was just. It was amazing, you know. Like
I love those moments, man. And it doesn't have to be about the movies. It could be about theater or music. But when you see the spark in somebody's eyes of whatever they're passionate about, I'm sold. Like you got me sold. Before I kind of give mine in Austin's sake, because we rewatched it. But Jonathan, I don't know if you saw the picture or not, or if you have anything kind of on your perspective from Cinema Paradiso.
I still haven't seen it yet, but based on whatever you're saying, it's kind of fascinating because I actually am the same way with film. So I like to watch films twice, because if I'm really engaged with them, like, so once I go in with my filmmaker mind turned off, I don't try to overanalyze everything. I just take in the story. Then the second time, if I appreciate it, then, you know, I want to look for the little details and look for like those things that, you know, I can appreciate more from a filmmaker perspective.
You know what it is?
Yeah.
It's the fact that right now, like we're both going through kind of like our film school, and we're still trying to like finish up this whole thing. Yeah. And basically every word we've heard about film up to this point has been like how to break it down. What's a good story? What's a good this? What's a good that? And like me trying to work towards like cinematography, I'm like analyzing things because those are like bits of information that I can kind of pick up on. So it's amazing when I can watch films that force me to turn that off and just kind of sit and watch and appreciate, you know.
I'm glad because, you know, I'll be the first to say in this panel of individuals, man, for those of you listening, it's hard to impress these guys. It is because then they'll watch a film I suggest and be like, okay, it's another fucking 1960s Italian or whatever it is. And it's whatever. And then I get that. I get like you fall into this trance of like, oh, it's just
That's
whatever
good that you get that, man.
he's into. Wow. But it's hard to impress them. And I'll comment on the law a little bit because we screened the film yesterday, and his reaction was no reaction, which is almost better than anything else. And when we finished the film, he was like, why is this so good? Why haven't more people seen this? Why? Not only that, but he was like, I can't tell you what's good about it. It's just good. I can't tell you what the good thing is. It's just good. And I love that. I love that reaction of like, you're still like encapsulated by the story in the film, that
so much so that I wanted to cry when I saw Alfredo come back, because I thought like I could feel it building up, that like I was like, something's wrong, and you could tell that they were like foreshadowing it with the camera showing Alfredo's face, and he was kind of sad, and you could tell something was up. And then like, I mean, the whole scene where the place burns down, and you're just like, oh no, this is terrible, and it hurts too much. And then he just pops back out of nowhere, and you're just like, you're happier than the kid. And you just
those type of emotions is why I do film. Those are the ones I'm striving for. You know what I mean? Like, that's why I love movies, but that's what I'm doing this for, to get those emotions out of people. You know, can I do that? You know,
that's the thing. Yeah.
By the way, Castro had the same thing. He was like when Alfredo came back, he was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, good." Like it's like this big relief.
Yes.
Austin, I want to hear from you, man, because this was I screened it for you, or Luis screened it for both of us, I think, at the same time. I don't remember, but you rewatched it and you had a big kind of like impression on it last night too. What was your take on rewatching this film for the second time?
No, I think more than anything, just pissed on myself for not seeing it more often, and just the film as a whole. Like Bilal said, it's like, how have more people not seen this type of thing? And
how is it just?
How is it just good?
And it's just everything like, that.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Les.
No, I was just gonna say, and it's that type of film that's like, how like the payoff at the end is just so remarkable that it makes you want to go back and rewatch the entire thing again.
It also, it's one of those films, I think it's also like Parasite in the sense that it's one of those films that if you show somebody who is still very iffy on foreign cinema, and it's still very much like, nah, I can't connect with a movie where I gotta basically read through the subtitles. I mean, all the
normal, to watch, not to read.
Yeah, all the normal like stereotypes.
Oh, I hate those people.
Bong Joon-ho's amazing quote is, once you've overcome the 1-inch tall barrier of subtitles, you will be introduced to so many more amazing films.
And I gotta admit, I was one of those guys. But I saw the film and I was just like,
and after watching it, I'm like, I don't care if you think that foreign films are weird. I'm gonna sit you down and we're gonna watch this because it's too good.
I'm trying to do that with you guys. That's why, like, when I pick a film, most of the time it's a foreign film, because you have to be exposed to that type of cinema to understand the cinema you're doing or the cinema you currently love in the States, because it's all inspired by these guys, man. Like,
there's so many takeaways in all departments of movie making when you look at films from other parts of the world, you know, because everybody brings in their own perspective. I mean, you know, of course there's like the French and German experimental films that, you know, brought in new techniques and all that, but it gives you a breath of fresh air that sometimes you're not able to always get with, like,
I mean, Bong Joon-ho kind of said it in his thing, and we'll talk about it because I know we're all going to want to do Parasite on this podcast, but he kind of explored, like, look, I didn't realize, I thought money and greed was a Korean thing, but it's not. It's a universal theme. And I think that's what kind of, when it's foreign cinema that has a universal theme, that's it. You got any, I don't care what language it's in. If it's a universal theme, like Cinema Paradiso, it's about loving cinema. And there's also a love story intertwined into that, which I want to get into.
There's this.
That's one thing I
go ahead.
There's this thing I really like about the whole. Oh, sorry.
Go for it. No, I was just thinking out loud.
There's this thing I really like about the whole beauty of watching foreign films, is that when you watch just like, if you're just entrapped in just watching American movies,
right.
Basically, you just have three settings. You have L.A., you have Chicago, you have New York.
Yeah.
And then, well, there's other movies like for
Sure,
the countryside and all stuff, right? But basically, you're just seeing those three. But when you start watching foreign films, you actually see all these different settings around them. Just
like
the
Lord
fact
of the
that in Cinema
Rings.
Paradiso, just that town square,
and that's
it's
what
just such a different thing.
that's what I've loved about the binge I've been on with Fellini. All the Fellini films for the most part take place in Rome. And Rome is like the LA, like the New York City of Italy, right? So Rome is the big tourist popular city. But he places these characters in Rome that either have lived there their whole life or have wanted, like, you know, we write films. I wrote Sun City Lights when I wrote Sun City Lights about a guy who wants to go to the Austin film scene because he wants to get the hell out of El Paso, and that was kind of his mentality. Right. And I love stories like that where they like What's Eating Gilbert Grape? Like, I have to get out of this godforsaken town. And I saw this Fellini film called Viteani, which is about four guys who are young dudes partying it up in a small town in Italy and aren't really doing anything with their lives. But there's one guy who's like, I got to go to Rome. I got to take off to Rome. I got to go to the motherland and like make something of my life. And it's so interesting to see that other countries, other territories have the same thing that we have, like
they got to get to.
Yes, like us as filmmakers, it's like, we got to get to Hollywood. Quote unquote,
that's where we're going back to the whole concept of there being like a universal struggle, because we don't understand, like, you know, me, I couldn't understand what opportunities are in Rome, but seeing the way that they talk about Rome, seeing the way that they like Alfredo was able to talk to Toto and like say, you got to go out, you got to explore the world. This right here, it might seem nice, but
it might seem, his exact words were, it might seem like this place is the center of the universe, but it's really not. You need to
but everybody in every city across everywhere has always experienced that feeling of like, this might feel like the center of the universe, but you just got to go out to really grow and experience the world and live up to your full potential. So I think that's where, you know, even though this film was based off of a scene in like the 1950s or so and kind of going from that area, everybody can connect with that, you know.
This film was by the way, filmed in Bagheria, Sicily. And if you know anything about Sicily, it's kind of like the gritty, true blue Italian. It's where true blue Italians are from, at least in films. Even, you know, The Godfather, that their ancestry comes from Sicily. Scorsese's parents come from Sicily. It's all of that kind of that small section of Italy. But this was filmed in Bagheria, Sicily, which is the director's hometown. And he wrote and directed this film. And I don't want to butcher his name again, so I'm not going to say it, but he drew on his childhood experiences, and that's kind of what inspired the film. Also, Castro, I think you'll find it interesting that Philippe Noiret, the guy that plays Alfredo, he said all of his lines in French, and they were later dubbed in Italian because French is.
Yeah, you can see a couple of ones where
you see some dubs, right?
Yeah.
He was a French actor, like that's his native language, and they were later dubbed by Vittorio De Prima, which is an Italian filmmaker more than anything. He was like crew on like Once Upon a Time in America and La Piviota and all these other films. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting because he looked the most Italian out of everybody, and he wasn't even Italian. Man. Like,
he does look like that Italian uncle.
Acting at its best, right?
What was your guys' reaction to, like, I think my favorite line in the film where Toto's like laying down, it's when they're having like the gondolas and they're watching a movie, and he's like, why can't it be that part in the movie where the storm just comes or
fade out or whatever,
and it just fades out and then things get better, like darn this like summer,
he says darn this summer, if this were a movie it would have been over already.
And then it just rains. It's beautiful.
It's so good.
My favorite scene is when they're taking the exam and they bring the adults in.
Oh, that scene's great. Yeah, that's why I was counting right now. Just like,
Toto.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful, the transition. He's helping them out down here, dressed the same stuff.
It's so good, man. It's so good. I think so I love the upon watching it again, this is like my 5th, 6th, 7th time seeing it or whatever. I caught the intertwining of the love arc a little more on this viewing. and I think you guys will catch it more on your second viewing. But just to point out a little bit of what I caught, you have the love arc, and I let me get the girl's name because I don't want to butcher it either. But no, it was here it is. It's no, Anna's the mom. Elena. It's Elena. Played by Agnes Nano. White, blue-eyed actress, and Alfredo is a big guy of like all the ones with the blue eyes are always the worst, man. The ones with the blue eyes are always the worst. And he warns him like, dude, it's gonna go bad for you, if you're not careful. And to be fair, it wasn't her fault. Like he conquered her and they fell in love and he was able to manage that. But moving away and not knowing where she went and not knowing, it kind of reminded me, it gives me like this, like the Notebook sentiment to it. Where, for a year goes off to war, doesn't get the letters, does get the letters, whatever, and by the way, I don't care. I like the Notebook. I've been saying that. I just like that film. It's fine.
Bad, Carlos. Bad.
But anyways, it's Nick Cassavetes, the son of the great John Cassavetes.
Bad.
Anyways, but no, I love the arc where they fall in love and the mom gives these subtle hints of like, every time I call you, a different woman answers the phone. In his older age, he never married. He never fell in love, for longer than however, couple dates or whatever. And this is all credited to like two things. I think the fact that his heart was broken so bad with the love of his life, and that his wife was cinema. And that's who he dedicated kind of his life to. And you start seeing that a little more like, oh wait, was it the fact that he was heartbroken by this beautiful girl who he fell in love with, who he thought is the love of his life and he's going to come back to after his training? Or is it he dedicated his life to cinema and he became a big director? He became a respected director.
And like validating that theory is that final scene where he's watching all the the passionate moments at the
biggest
end.
Payoff.
That shows, it's I don't know. It was like his own like kiss at the very end of the film, like him finally getting that kind of like.
I like that.
Yeah, it's true. It's like he didn't understand what these meant as a kid, right? These kisses and this, but now he realizes like, oh, it's everything. Even in cinema, love is everything, and love is what we fantasize about depending on the film we're watching, right? And it's so good, man.
That's why I want to do this podcast, dude. I missed all those, man. That's beautiful.
To also move things forward, Carlos, you said something really kind of heavy, I guess, during the film, but the more I think about it, the more it makes sense. You would always listen to the score and say, this score is the motif. I don't know if you want to kind of break down what you were talking about.
The Academy Award winning Italian Adam Sandler. The amazing Ennio Morricone did the score for this film, and this was almost at his, I want to say it's at his peak, but the guy just won an Oscar for The Hateful Eight before he died, so it wasn't his peak. He was still making films after. That's why I say Tarantino is a big film buff, man. He got Ennio Morricone because Ennio Morricone did all of the scores for the great A Fistful of Dollars, all of these spaghetti westerns that we know. That was Ennio Morricone. That was his. But I think Ennio Morricone has the most. When I say like a director like Steven Spielberg is a chameleon of cinema, he doesn't have a set genre. He could kind of just do anything he wants and it works. And actors are chameleons. They could kind of do anything, there's very few people I can say are chameleons in cinema in terms of composing, and Ennio Morricone is at the top of that list. More than John Williams, because John Williams has a style, man. When it's John Williams, what he's doing. Danny Elfman is probably second banana to Ennio Morricone on that list, because Danny Elfman could do Beetlejuice and then turn around and do Good Will Hunting.
And The Simpsons.
The Simpsons, and The Simpsons, a great Simpsons thing that he did.
Also, Trent Reznor right now is actually
Trent and his partner. I forget the other guy's name, but those two.
Atticus Ross. Yeah, those two guys are doing something special right now. I agree. But Ennio Morricone, again, he's done stuff like The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing.
The Exorcist too.
The Exorcist, Once Upon a Time in America, the Hateful Eight, like I said. I think he did another one of Tarantino's
Inglourious
films.
Bastards as
Inglourious
well,
Bastards. Was it Inglourious Bastards?
Yeah, he did Inglourious Bastards. I think he also did. I know he did Django too, right? Or did he?
Did he? He might have, because it was a western.
No, he didn't do.
He sampled music, I think.
Yeah, because Inglourious Bastards, I think he didn't like the way Tarantino was spacing out the music in his film.
Oh, yeah.
Wanted to, so that's why they had like a falling out with Django, and then they went into the Hateful Eight.
That's right. They kind of stopped talking for a bit, and then he contacted him again for the Hateful Eight, and they didn't even. Ennio Morricone did the score in Italy. Him and Tarantino never even met, like in person. Like he would just call him, send him the film, and then he'd do the score. And I think the Hateful Eight, if I'm not mistaken, was his last film before he passed away.
Wow.
In fact,
yeah, it's true. He passed away.
Yeah, he passed away last year in 2020. It was terrible. But I love what Tarantino says about Ennio Morricone, and I'll get into what you're talking about, though. But Tarantino says he said Tarantino accepted the Academy Award for the Hateful Eight on behalf of Ennio Morricone, because Ennio Morricone was too old to travel and he didn't come to the Academy Awards. And
Did he ask Tarantino?
Oh no, he was there. He had a translator there for the Oscars.
No. Tarantino accepted the award.
I swear I remember him being on stage.
It might have been like another.
No, I remember the Oscars because I remember the Hateful, because I remember being so happy that the Hateful Eight finally won an Oscar.
No, dude, Google it. It's Tarantino accepted the award. I know, as I saw it live.
Maybe it was the Golden Globes, because I swear I remember him.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But anyways, for the Oscars, Tarantino accepted the award on behalf of Morricone, and he said, I love what he said about Ennio is, he said,
he was there.
He said, he was at the Oscars?
Yeah, he had a translator there.
Yeah, he's up there. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's weird. I thought, I know that Tarantino went up for something.
Was it the
Golden Globes? Maybe the Golden Globes or
maybe
the Critics' Choice Awards or something like
that. Well, anyways, Tarantino goes up and he says, Ennio Morricone is my favorite composer of all time. He said, let me rephrase that. Not film composer, period. When you put him up against Bach, when you put him up against Mozart, anybody, he's my favorite composer of all time. This is what Tarantino said about Morricone. I'm telling you, man, Morricone's a legend in everything. He's worked with Brian De Palma's and Oliver Stone's and the John Carpenters. He's worked with everybody. Everybody except Scorsese, oddly enough. And
wow.
Which is weird, right? You know what I think? My theory is Scorsese is currently working on a film that's a Western, his first Western. Although I feel like Boxcar Bertha is a Western. But anyways, I feel like if Ennio Morricone was still alive, he'd be doing this film with Scorsese.
Oh, okay.
Because it's a Western, you know. So it's
does anybody have a bingo card?
Yeah, please.
Dude.
You know what I think? I think everybody on this panel has a drinking game that I'm not aware of. So whenever I mention Scorsese, you guys take a shot or something.
There's a reason why I always go like this.
Anyways, I mentioned that the score of this film is the motif. In this film, because anytime you hear the score in the film, let me put it to you this way: whenever you hear the score from now on, it's going to take you back to Cinema Paradiso. And it's these key moments. It's the one score that's repeated throughout the entire film and doesn't go old and doesn't feel aged or it feels like it's in the right moments. It's where I needed the score to be. You know?
What's funny is since I looked up the Academy Awards, I'm seeing people actually mention he deserved Oscars for Cinema Paradiso as one of the films that, like, the primary film scores that he had brought up. And also The Mission and the Dollars Trilogy, of course.
Look, man, John Williams wins every time. Has 30 Oscars, and I don't hate him. I love John Williams, but other filmmakers like Ennio Morricone don't get the credit they deserve because of guys like Hans Zimmer, guys like John Williams, like these either UK or American.
He gets nominated a lot, but he hasn't won as many. But I think that it's kind of interesting how he's never really. How everybody says he's the guy, but he does win like a lot, but not as many as we may think. He just gets nominated as he's like the Meryl Streep essentially of composers.
Again,
Deakins as well.
I'll give you another bingo one, man. He's Scorsese. Scorsese's been nominated 50 times. He's only won once. You know, so no, but you know what? Ennio Morricone did, however, win an honorary Academy Award in 2007.
That's right.
For his contributions to cinema.
This is in case he died before that.
Right. Hey, man, he
Hey,
died
yeah.
13 years later, so he did pretty good for himself.
Which is what
So
that's essentially why I see it. What I see as an honorary Academy Award. Like, okay, we didn't get you one, but here, does this count before you die?
Hey, man, they did that to Chaplin, and Chaplin's a legend. Chaplin is, so whatever, right? But anyways, that's why the Academy. I love the Academy. I love what it stands for, and I love history of it. But it's everything. Film watching is subjective. I say that time and time again. It is what it is, right? So, anyways, I'm currently working on a musical, and when I'm working with my composers, we're revisiting these classic musicals, American musicals and Italian musicals, and every once in a while, a film will pop up where I'm like, we need the motif, we need the one score that's gonna mean the most out of this one section.
It's that part of filmmaking, and it's that part of just like films in general that when all the parts work together, it's like the score can either be something where I think we've all seen a film that it's, at least for me, it's cheesy, and you see that it's the score pops in and it obviously feels sad, and you're like, the story didn't do enough to kind of justify the sad moment, and they're trying to like back it up with the score. But I mean, with this film, it really like it tries to bring in this motif of like love. It tries to bring in this motif of nostalgia, and the score says
everything you need to know.
It hits it. It reinforces it. It's not trying to like overexert it. It's not trying to be like old and outdated. It reinforces that feeling that you already have because of the story, not like it's trying to give you the feeling, or like
I mean, it's we talked about it in this podcast with La La Land. La La Land has the same thing. They have the motif. They have me and Sebastian's theme. Me and Sebastian's theme is the motif for that entire film. It's not City of Stars. It's me and Sebastian's theme.
It's City of Stars.
So
hey, Carlos, I'm just kind of curious, since you're doing a musical, I have to ask, are you also looking into TV musicals? Because I know it's a totally different like genre, but I'm curious to know if you have looked at some things like as like inspiration from TV.
I mean, I've looked at stuff like the different iterations that they use for TV that are based on film.
You should try Buffy the Vampire Slayer's Once More with Feeling, because it's an entirely diegetic musical.
Really interesting.
So what they do, so since it's a supernatural story, it's literally about the characters. They start singing, and you think it's like this kind, like it's a musical, but then the characters are aware that they're in a musical. They're like, so did anybody else just kind of pop into a song?
You know what, man? I love when sitcoms do every show
Buffy did it first.
Network TV. Everybody does it. Everybody. How I Met Your Mother did it. Friends. Everybody does the musical episode. Everybody. It's just a thing. It's a staple in TV now, where they have to have one. I mean, it's sitcom TV, not like sitcom.
What's interesting though is that this one's referred to as the musical episode. That's what's fascinating. Yeah, so
I'll have to check it out. No, I've been paying attention more to cinema, man. I'm sure if I was doing more episodic stuff, then that's what I'd be paying attention.
Yeah, that's why.
But no, I'm paying attention more to the Gene Kelly, Fred Astaire, even the Italian stuff like the Brothers of Cherbourg and the Young Girls of Rochefort and stuff, and obviously La La Land and Grease and all these great musicals that
I know that one.
Jukebox musicals that we have. So
a little personal story with since we were with the music of the movie. As many people might know at the moment, I have a newborn.
What?
I have a newborn, and the thing is that when I decided to watch this movie, it wasn't a day that my wife had to work, so I was gonna stay with her like the whole day. And I was like, okay, I know my baby's gonna just start crying randomly, and I'm just gonna have to like pause the movie and maybe watch it another day and stuff like that. I had that plan. Well, I put on the movie, and eventually, I kind of got her to sleep. Like, okay, she's sleeping. Yeah. It ended up being that she slept throughout the whole movie. So I was able to watch the whole movie.
It's okay. That's most people's watch through.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's most people's experiences with the films I suggest, Yoko. It's fine, man. It's fine. Your daughter.
Yeah. That's actually how my girlfriend was with Star Wars. So
God.
But the thing is that a lot I think it has to do with the music, because the music was actually, it has this very like kind of lullaby-ish. Because it's very dreamy.
Absolutely.
Very dreamy.
Dreamy is the right word. Dreamy is the right word. It's like what Disney does now. What Disney and Pixar do now with score. It's this dreamy kind of
whimsical.
Renaissance.
Not whimsical, but kind of
Well, sometimes it's
Soothing,
musical, but
soothing maybe.
Soothing,
Yeah, soothing.
but it's
More
very
soothing,
grand.
happy.
It's a grand
Yeah,
orchestration
I know what you mean.
of
You
it.
definitely feel the violence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm picturing. I'm just thinking of the Inside Out like score for
Yeah.
some reason.
Yeah, that's a
yeah.
good example. Anyways, when it comes to this particular one, I think the motif we're all talking about is the love theme, and it was actually co-written with his son and Andre Morricone. And Ennio kind of did the composition and the arrangement of the orchestration. And if you're a music nerd and you know music, and again, I'm working on a musical right now, so these are terms I know because my composers and I are really working hard on it. But you have the orchestration, which is the arrangement of the actual instruments, and then you have the composition, which is the writing of the music itself. So the writing of the music itself was mostly done by his son for that particular love theme, just for that particular love theme, which is the most important one. And Ennio Morricone did the arranging of the orchestration. So Ennio came in and said, I want violins, I want this, I want that, and I want this many of them here. In fact, when they did the honorary Oscar theme, Morricone played this score in, like, he was composing, or he was conducting rather, and he conducted this into that mix of all of his work. This is a very special score to him, or was a very special score to him. Yeah, the score is pivotal, man. It's pivotal in this film. It tells the story without telling the story, and that's the best thing you want for a score in your film, is when people listen back to it to remember, oh, that's when this scene happened. Oh, that's when this moment happened. That's what you want in your scores. So, without even knowing that this was Morricone the first time I watched it, he's quickly become one of my favorite cinematic composers of all time. It's like when I watched like Water for Chocolates, a film my wife loves. First time I watched it kind of thinking, oh, this is a good movie, and kind of watched it again. All right, this is a pretty good movie. And then I realized Chivo did the cinematography, and I didn't even realize it till the second, third time I watched it. It's that type of thing. Like, then you realize, oh, it's Ennio Morricone. No wonder this is so good. It's because it's him, and it's that, and he's a legend.
You have your own like music, like cinematic, like theme, like musical tracks playlist or anything like that? Because I do too. Yeah.
Oh yeah. You throw those playlists on Spotify or whatever, and not maybe again, this film falls under the radar for so many people.
Yeah.
So I don't know that this score's paid attention to as much as it should be. Like you said, the Oscars kind of snubbed it.
Yeah,
But
the actual theme, I have heard it other places.
Yeah.
And it is like, once I started hearing it, like, oh, okay, that's where it's.
Is it like one of those themes where like you may have probably heard it in the past, unaware of like where it came from, and now you're like, oh, so this is where the source of it is from.
It's not that big. I mean, this is something that I know went on the radar for a lot of people, and
it's familiar. It's familiar. It's a familiar theme. It's a familiar.
Yeah, it's not Superman or Indiana Jones theme familiar, but it's like something that you might have heard in the background.
Or I don't know, unless you meant like something different. Though, like, is it?
No, I just know that this was a theme that, like, now that I've heard it, or now that I've heard the score and I guess the kind of sounds to it, I'll pick it up and I'll recognize it. But it's something that I know if I was to play out in general, nobody would pick it up for that. Like, it would sound like a film score maybe, but it wouldn't have that kind of like, oh, this is Cinema Paradiso, like, I mean, I don't feel like it would have that immediate connection for a lot of people. Just because it didn't have enough
that Italian vibe to it. So
I mean,
a little bit.
Unless they're super emotionally connected to the film, maybe they could. Because I'm the same way with like with scores like The Truman Show and stuff like that, or Terminator 2.
I think it just has to do with what story it's telling. I think for this particular film, it had the biggest kind of trope that it was going through is that the director wanted, like, his intention with this film was that it serves as an obituary for traditional movie theaters. That was his big thing. Is it's sending the traditional movie theater off to the retirement home feeling good about it, So because
ready for inspiring humans.
But it's so telling. It's so telling to the current times, man, because everybody's talking about streaming is king and what's going to happen to the movie theaters. And it's so fitting right now for like, oh man, what's going to happen to our precious cinema houses,
There are a lot of cinemas that already closed down. So
but I mean, we were even talking about it last night when we watched it.
Yeah.
There's something about the theater that, I mean, like, there's the places that we've all gone to, which is like the dollar movies, and that has its own kind of fun experience, and it's just like, oh, something fun to do, to go out and have fun with. But then there's also the cinema experience of going to, like, let's say, like now they're making like Alamo Draft House or Flicks Brew House and stuff like that, where there's an experience of being around people, enjoying the sights, the smells, the sounds, and really being in a place where you're absorbing film in a way that maybe with like cheaper theaters and all that kind of stuff, you don't get that kind of effect. And for a lot of people who are thinking of like the movies for themselves being just those cheaper theaters or going there, it's easy for that to kind of die out because, you know, streaming at home, binging a show at home, that just makes more sense. It's more economically feasible. It's just easier, but I don't think you'll ever take away that kind of like ultimate cinema experience that we've all had at the theaters, you know?
I've had that experience. I'm sorry, go ahead, man.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was saying, I was thinking about this a while back, like not like before the pandemic happened. Like I was thinking about this with Star Wars when we were having like the premieres, and I thought about like, yeah, we're kind of taking it for granted now because you know, we don't like the films, but I kind of applaud the fact that we're part of this generation that gets to appreciate the fact that we're in the theaters when these films premiere. You know, not that many people get that privilege.
I will say
get that, and there's been films that have become classics that I got to see in theaters when they came out. Like something I thought about too recently was I went to go see Elf when it first came out in theaters, and I was part of that few who actually got to see that experience. I didn't just watch it on TV and it became a classic. So
yeah. And no, I think that's a special thing, Jonathan, because as much as I hate to admit it, that side of cinema is dying. And I'm one of the advocates. I'm trying to keep, you know, theaters alive and that type of thing. And we all are, everybody in this panel, but in this particular, it's funny that we all say that because there's a song, if you haven't heard it, it's by Joni Mitchell. It's called Big Yellow Taxi. And it talks about, it's a very famous song. If you've heard, I'm sure everybody's heard it, where it says, they paved paradise and put up a parking lot. That's kind of the common line of the song. It's actually about this movie. It's kind of paying homage to this movie. And the big famous line is, they paved paradise, Paradiso, Cinema Paradiso. They paved it and put up a parking lot. The fate of the cinema in the film is that they knock it down to use a parking lot for that central town square. That's what the cinema is used for in that particular case.
This is my square though.
Yeah, this is my town square's mine.
You know,
town square's mine. Such a great character. I love that character so much.
I love that the way that the film was showing, I guess, kind of that mentality that we even have right now, where a lot of us kind of will take for granted the act of just kind of going to the theaters and watching it, and we all enjoy it. And then when it's there, it's great, and when it's gone, we're like, oh, that was, you know, it's a shame and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But at the end of the film, when he's going and looking at the faces, and there's the faces of the people that would just go to the movies constantly, and you could see that they paid so much respect to him for being the person who would just turn on the projector because it connected with them in that way.
He told the owner of the theater in that scene, I love what he says. He goes to him and he says, well, when did it close? Oh, about 6 years ago. You know as well as I do that the industry right now isn't doing anything. Look, by the end of 1924, Italy's entire film output was less than 20 films. This is from 1924, kind of in those 12 years, there was only 20 titles being put out. Once Italian cinema started picking back up, there was over 200 films being put out from Italy. So it's a commentary on the not just the Italian film market, but the film market in general. The U.S. was also suffering at the time with cinema and cinema staying open. But what he tells the owner is, why would you allow it? You used to boss me around. Now he's the big director, and he's like, well, kind of maybe you have more power than I do at this point because I couldn't leave it open. So it's special, man. It's special, and I think it's more than Hugo, much more than Hugo. Hugo tackles the love for cinema and the love for cinematic history, but this tackles the love for art houses and cinema houses. So I think this
cinematic
film
experience.
It's what's up?
Is it the cinematic experience?
Yeah, the cinematic experience. The going to the cinema to fall in love with whatever's up on the picture. So. fun little fact that in that scene where the big payoff scene where we see all the kisses and the montage, the guy who's running the projector for the director for our character for Toto, he's the director of the film. The guy who puts the projector out.
Little details, man.
That's the director of the film.
Do we get to see the director, or he just?
No, you get to see his face. You get to see him. He's the one that like we cut to the projectionist while he's setting up the film, we
director cameos are always either amazing or awkward.
Yeah, or corny.
Yeah. I mean, Hitchcock does them best, right? But
oh no, of course it's Tarantino with his weird.
My word.
I'm just kidding.
Hey,
Tarantino is the most awkward director
to
cameo
himself
ever, other than From Dusk Till Dawn. Every other cameo is just so weird.
Which was another?
I know. Pulp Fiction.
Little Nicky.
Yeah, Jimmy's fine.
Hey, you know what? That one's actually funny. I actually applaud him for going all in with that one.
Is really cool.
That one's fine. He also the one in Django's is alright. He does
Which
the
was in
Australian
Django?
accent.
Which is that one?
He's the Australian,
the slave owner.
The Australian slave owner.
Oh yeah.
He's also in he was also the guy who got scalped in one of the Nazis who got scalped in Inglourious Bastards. So that's probably his best. He's quiet.
Yeah, he played.
I like to think that Little Nicky was part of the reason
that
how
one
he
was
got
so fun.
I think that's actually how the talks with Adam Sandler being the Bear Jew got started.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll be the cameo in your movie if you come in mine.
I'm so glad Eli Roth took over that though. Eli Roth was perfect.
Yeah.
I think he was, man. Eli Roth was perfect for that role. I don't think Sandler would have done it justice. Sandler was too green. He was too green at the time.
Yeah.
I don't think.
I'm so curious to know how he would have looked in that role, though. Just because he would have had to bulk up a little bit. Slightly.
And it would have set him apart.
Taken a different turn. It would have taken a different turn. Yeah. But anyways, guys, I think we're getting ready to wrap up this before we get into the Tower Crown. So, any final thoughts on Cinema Paradiso?
Second to last segment, I guess. Castro, as we've kind of tried to always do in every episode, it's a famous question. Which character would you most like to have played in this film? And also, which role do you think would have been the most challenging?
Well, that's not a fair question, man.
like
roles, the kid, Alfredo, you know.
I mean, would you have played Alfredo's Toto's sister? Exactly. They're not all good roles.
Obviously the most challenging one is the kid, man. That guy's amazing.
Which one? Do you think it's the oldest, the middle, the youngest?
No, the youngest. The kid.
Youngest. Okay.
Yeah, but I relate more with Alfredo, man. I like to see myself as I like to give back if I can, if I have the knowledge or if I can.
Yeah.
That's why I relate with Alfredo a lot, man. Like when I saw Carlos, I could see the passion in his eyes when I first saw him. So it's one of those things that, man, I gotta stay glued to this guy.
Something about the way that Alfredo just would sit down next to the kid and like speak these facts of life, but you could tell that there was so much heart coming out of them.
Exactly. The monologue where he tells the story of the guy who waits outside for 100 days and 100 nights.
Oh yeah.
And then he's like, well, then what the fuck was the point of that story? He's like, I don't know. You tell me what the point of that story was. It's so good, dude. Yeah.
But yeah, man, I like both the kid and Alfredo. But yeah, go for it, Yoko. Get me out of this.
So yeah, is that getting kind of like there's this one thing that he says that for me is like the like my phrase of the movie, and it's when the kid Toto asks him, so you're here all this time, why don't you get bored after watching so many movies?
Right.
The same movie a lot of times? And he's like, I mean, sometimes it's like, yeah, but in the end, the fact that I put the movie and I see the people's reaction, and I see when someone cries, when someone laughs, and knowing that I put that for them to see.
Yeah.
That's why I do this.
That's so good.
Oh my god. I actually watch YouTube channel videos to see like people's reactions to the same movies that I watch. Just so I could hear if they laughed at the same things or like reacted in the same way that I did. Like I did that for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, just so I could see. I was like, okay, I got to hear how everybody reacted. Yeah. And the ending it was amazing.
I think it's the same feeling that every one of us gets when I know it's the same feeling I get when I get to screen a film that I love for a friend. Like it's that same feeling. Like, and most of the time it's positive. Yeah. Other times
I have to make sure that it's a film that I know that they're gonna like. Though if it's not,
I don't care. I'm gonna screen it and hopefully you like it.
Like I can't show my girlfriend Star Wars and hope and think that she's gonna like it.
No, like my thing is, I'm showing it to you because I love it and I want to see if you love it too. I don't care if
I'm the same way. I just know that she's not gonna like it, so I'm just
like for instance, and it's a film we're gonna talk about on this podcast. I bugged Austin and Delau to watch Ruby Sparks after I saw it.
Yeah.
I saw it once and then I screened it for my wife. I was like, you got to watch this with me. And she watched it and she's like, oh yeah, that was great. And then I told Austin, you got to watch it. He watched it and then Delau watched it. And I was like, you guys have to watch this. And the reaction was the same. Like, oh my gosh, what the fuck? Yeah. Why was this swept under the rug with Ruby Sparks? You know, so it's the same feeling I get. I want to be able to say, like, even if it's like boring at the end of the day, at least they got to see it. Yeah, you know, at least we could have that discussion
about
it.
The whole thing of like, I mean, I think that's why we're all kind of here and why we made the podcast and why we decided to become filmmakers. We all got a feeling and we just want to have that feeling go to other people. And it's just that whole thing, you know, like, I mean, Castro, you're talking about it earlier with like acting. I mean, I'm talking about it with cinematography. You're talking about it with like directing in the films you've seen, you know, Jonathan, same way, Yoko, same way. Like there's a feeling that we all had. And we just want everybody who can possibly have that same thing go straight to them. You know, like I could film something.
And by the way, the feeling is what we capture, and the feeling. If you want that feeling, if you're a filmmaker, or you're a film lover, and you're like, I haven't seen a movie that's given me that feeling in a while. Watch Cinema Paradiso. Don't get me wrong; it has very great technical aspects to it. The editing is some of the best editing I've seen.
But you won't care at that point.
But you won't care, yeah. But the editing is there. Even Delau was like, "Oh, that was a great shot," but it wasn't.
That's how you know it was a great edit too. He didn't even pay attention to it.
As usual. Like it wasn't as consistent. Like we saw Tenet and it was like, "Oh, that was a great shot," or "That was good editing," or whatever. But when we saw this, it didn't matter. You were encapsulated. You were in love with this story. Look, Cinema Paradiso was the Foreign Academy Award winner in 1989. It beat out a bunch of other films.
In my year. Okay.
It was the grand jury winner for Cannes, the prestigious French Film Festival Cannes. And it's on, if you know anything about Steven Schneider, he does the whole 1001 movies you have to see before you die. It's on that list. It's on AFI's top foreign cinema list. This movie went under the radar for the general population, but for film lovers, they love it. Roger Ebert as well went on record to say, okay, so there's a cinematic theatrical release and there's an extended cut. And the extended cut is the one that we tend to see. But Roger Ebert, the late, great Roger Ebert said, he gave the film 4 stars out of 4 stars. And he said, still, I'm happy to have seen it, not as an alternate version, but as the ultimate exercise in viewing deleted scenes when he saw the extended cut. This was Roger Ebert saying, this isn't an alternate version. It's what to do right with the deleted scenes. Like, this is what...
And then for the casual film viewer, that's usually what they think about The Lord of the Rings, Return of the King.
Right. Yeah. So just watch Cinema Paradiso. I promise you won't be disappointed. Everything about this film is great. The acting, the directing,
do watch it,
writing.
And if you are disappointed, Carlos will pay you $10,000. You made this promise.
I'm pretty confident.
He's pretty confident
about this film. Hey.
His wife's ready to divorce him on the spot if you win.
You know what? I'm glad that Carlos, you have so many open-minded people around you, because my family is not that open-minded. So, like,
yeah, me too.
Don't get me wrong. My wife and I get into these discussions, man. Don't get me wrong. My wife and I, she's her mantra is, I'm a general audience member, so I don't see it the way you do.
Don't get me started. I tried to get my family to watch The Lighthouse, so don't even get me started.
Okay, my dad didn't like Manchester by the Sea because he was like, "What the hell is the point of that movie?"
Yeah,
I was like,
"Nah, man." But that's why we have this podcast, John. Yeah, exactly. We have the other people who love cinema and want to do it.
But I think it's time for that moment.
Yeah, it's about that time.
Yoko. That time.
You're up, Yoko.
Oh, well. Oh, welcome to the Tower Crown, people.
Ooh.
So this time, since we were talking about Cinema Paradiso, it's basically the first foreign film that we tackle in this show.
Yep.
We thought, let's go with what's the best foreign drama for the people out there. So on Facebook, I put up a poll, which included the movies. Let me just put them up. Ooh.
First up,
they had Pan's Labyrinth.
Classic, boys.
Amores Perros.
Nah, man, I'm clocking out.
Life is Beautiful.
Life is Beautiful.
And Parasite.
How I want Parasite, man.
I do too.
So
I want
Parasite's a
the
classic.
foreign
It's a
picture.
beautiful film.
There's no way that one lost, dude. There's no way.
So
it
y'all
actually
voted, and the winners were
Parasite and
Amores Perros against Pan's Labyrinth.
Oh, interesting. Don't worry, people. If you were expecting or hoping to see Parasite, so was I. And we're going to do an episode on Parasite, a standalone episode. So, for sure.
I'm sorry for voting for Amores Perros.
oh, so where you got sides
So,
now?
on a little side note, this has been one of the most interacted polls that we had.
Yeah.
And I was actually surprised, and with all 4 films had a lot of votes in there.
Hey,
I know.
man,
I voted for Parasite. I know that. I don't know.
How many votes did each film get, or did Pan's Labyrinth and Amores Perros get at least?
I don't have the count here, but although
pretty big.
Pan's Labyrinth and Amores Perros, they were really up, but the other 2 were also like they had some considerable amount.
Yeah, because I think it's because Parasite is still a little green, but I mean it's still a fantastic film.
Oh, dude.
Oh yeah,
If you've seen it, you love it.
Really good.
I judge like films after they've been released, not just by the accolades they've gotten, but how I know it's stupid, but how quickly Criterion picks them up. Parasite was picked up immediately.
That's not fair.
I saw it in theaters, which was amazing. I
I did
away.
too. I saw the regular and the black and white version in theaters.
Oh, dude, it was so
how
worth
fast
it.
it was picked up by Criterion afterwards amazed me because not every film gets that treatment. So, anyways, but we'll talk about that when we get to the Parasite episode.
So, for this show, I'll be the moderator, and our special guest, Jonathan.
What team are you on?
As I have understood, you're going up for Amores Perros, debating
My boy,
that should be the
Giuseppe.
best movie.
Okay.
It's in my top 3 favorite
Carlos?
films of all time. So,
Who we got in the other
Carlos,
side?
you're going for Pan's Labyrinth, right?
I'm gonna be going for Pan's Labyrinth. If you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, I have my Criterion Niñaritos Amores Perros here, and it's still in the packaging. I still haven't opened this one because it just released. This just came out over Christmas. And I have my Guillermo del Toro Trilogía from Criterion, which includes Pan's Labyrinth. I'm excited to talk about these.
Carlos, you should give us an action figure style fighting with your 2 DVDs and show us who's gonna win this one.
it'll be Chivito versus Captain Vidal.
No, this is going to be interesting to talk about, man. Primarily, I'm actually very interested that these 2 won because it's 2 of the 3 amigos going up against each other. So this should be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what's interesting too is that Guillermo del Toro also had a huge hand in helping out Amores Perros too.
Well, he had feedback for him. He helped re-edit and recut the final cut of the film. Yeah, it was interesting. I like the conversation that took place for that. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll let you tell it if you know it. But
Hey, Jonathan,
Okay,
hold back with this guy, right? Go at him, man.
All right, so let's start this up. And this time, I will give the honor for our special guest.
absolutely.
Ooh,
no pressure.
Jonathan,
batter
let
up.
me know. Tell me, well, why should Amores Perros be the best foreign drama?
Well, I mean, it's kind of weird to compare it to Pan's Labyrinth because they're such different films because they're essentially 2 different monsters because Alejandro Iñárritu's format is usually based in grounded, realistic, and complex individuals, while Guillermo del Toro does a variety of fantasy and gothic horror, but he also does, he adds the element of realism with his stories and, incorporates that. But I think with Amores Perros, what I think was amazing about it was just the way it was told, the narrative, and how it related with all these individual stories taking place over this one event, and how essentially it was all a metaphor for these individuals without a father in Mexico City. So essentially, it starts off with the characters of Octavio and his brother, and with Kofi, and how they don't have a father figure in their lives, and the guy is a toxic masculine, and his brother's a toxic masculine individual, very abusive to his girlfriend. And then in the second story, you have the other father, Daniel, who's also who's an absentee father who's abandoning his family just for the sake of another woman, a younger prospect, if you will. And you see how life comes back to bite him in the ass for that decision. And then you also have the late father who's trying to come back from the dead, essentially, with El Chivito, who was the father who was practically considered dead or absent completely from the life of his daughter Maru. And so it's showing you essentially the perspective from all these different fathers, and how, essentially life in Mexico City is like without a father figure for a lot of masculine individuals. And so it was showing the interesting perspectives on that.
I can see how you're saying the different. Look, Iñárritu grounds himself in reality, and he has metaphors for the most part. However, what I love about Del Toro is he has parables.
Yeah, there's always the parallels, and I'll give him that.
He has parables. Literally, the parable. If the first place you hear of the word parable is in the Bible. And a parable is defined as a simple story used to illustrate a moral or spiritual lesson. Again, in the Bible, Jesus tells parables to kind of simplify the spiritualness of what he's trying to say to his disciples and to the people listening, right? So, I love that Del Toro takes this approach, because Del Toro is the creature feature guy. Del Toro is the monster guy, but he's also kind of the fantasy guy. This is when it comes to Pan's Labyrinth. Pan's Labyrinth was what broke Del Toro the most in his career. Pan's Labyrinth went to Cannes, and Pan's Labyrinth got a 22-minute standing ovation at Cannes after the screening. 22 minutes. Most films get 5. This Pan's Labyrinth got 22 minutes. The storytelling in this film is beautiful. It's Del Toro being a Mexican filmmaker and coming to tell his film that's predominantly told in Spanish from Spain, Castellano, and it's him telling this beautiful ability to tell a creature feature in a much different way. When you think of creature features, you think maybe you think of the classic Universal stories. You think of Dracula, and you think of again, Del Toro did Shape of Water. And I think Pan's Labyrinth was this like bridge that told Del Toro, this is how you have to tell stories. So the future films that you're going to get ready to tackle, this is your Bible. This is what you go back to.
Dude, Yoko put 2 points for him. Damn.
When you go back to Pan's Labyrinth, they have this really great story, which I think I told on the podcast before, that he had a conversation with Alfonso Cuarón, the other amigo that we're not talking about today. And they went out to a cafe, and the Toro was like, I'm going to make another studio picture, man. I'm tempted to get that money. And he lost his journal, man. He lost his journal.
Yeah, in a taxi, I believe.
In a taxi. He lost his journal for Pan's Labyrinth in a taxi.
But luckily the taxi driver brought it back to him, right?
He brought it back to him. Okay. And that's the moment Del Toro has gone on record. That's the moment he vowed that he's not going to make a studio picture for the money. He's going to make Pan's Labyrinth for the love of the story.
Yeah, because I remember essentially he didn't want to, sell out, because he wanted the story to be in Spanish, and the studio offered it to him like a bigger budget, or twice the budget.
Del Toro went repeatedly told no to studios and to producers, in spite of being offered double the budget, double his budget for a film that includes 10 times the CGI you need, double the budget. And he said he didn't want to compromise the storyline to suit the quote unquote market needs. He didn't want to fulfill Hollywood's desire. He wanted to tell the story the way he wanted to tell it. There's a thing in Pan's Labyrinth that I want to read really quick. It says, "Come away, O human child, to the waters and the wild, with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's a more full of weeping that you can understand." That's kind of like the poem of Pan's Labyrinth, and I'm not a big fantasy guy. I'm not. I'll be the first to admit it.
I'm not either. Don't worry.
Onward.
Well, onward is onward, hello. But Del Toro, I watched Pan's Labyrinth way later. I saw Hellboy first, I saw The Shape of Water first, and then I saw Pan's Labyrinth. I was late to the Pan's Labyrinth kind of crew. Eric Sanchez has been my DP for a lot of my films. He turned me on to Pan's Labyrinth. And after seeing it, I was like, oh my gosh, like, how have I missed out on this picture for so long? However, I'm more of a Shape of Water fan, because the Shape of Water fan just it floats my boat more, man, and how I like to tell stories.
No pun intended.
But yeah, exactly. But but Pan's Labyrinth has this beautiful tell. I'm gonna use Eric Sanchez's like what he says about this film as an example. He told me that when his parents took him to the movies to see this film because they thought it was a kid's film. They're not quite wrong. It plays like a fantasy child.
I've seen a lot of people actually have comments on that issue too, because I remember a lot of people. But then as soon as that bottle scene comes in, whoa, wait, what?
Yeah. But or him eating the fairies, dude. I mean, it's insane how it plays like a fantasy picture that you're reading off of a children's graphic novel.
What's interesting too is that the year it came out, I know it won a few Oscars. Like I know it won Best Cinematography and Best Foreign Language. But I remember, I think that also that year, Children of Men also came out, and so did Babel. And Babel was actually nominated for Best Picture, which was fascinating. Yeah, and it was an interesting year for the Three Amigos. I think another thing that you have to look at too was the trajectory of their careers after each film. Like Amores Perros went from, after this he did 21 Grams, he did the Trilogy of Death with Babel, and then after that he did Beautiful, I believe, and then he also did Birdman, finally winning the Best Picture and Best Director.
And that's why I can't put Amores Perros close to Pan's Labyrinth, because though I love Amores Perros, it's one of those films that you go back and watch if you're an Iñárritu fan, not a film that quote unquote cemented his career. This film, Amores Perros, kind of cemented his friendship with the Three Amigos, but that's about it.
I think it's still in a way cemented his a lot of his tropes, a lot of his like cinematic and
I think Iñárritu used this film to learn how to be a filmmaker, but I don't think he was there yet. I think Babel was
his Rushmore.
It was his Rushmore. That's good. Yeah, it was his Rushmore. It was his early picture that he had to make to learn how he was going to tell stories for the rest of his career. Yeah. I mean, look, it took him from Amores Perros.
It's a tricky thing though too, because you got to think about like where Guillermo del Toro was in his career when he made Pan's Labyrinth. Because I mean, Amores Perros was his first film, and this is like a knockout, like amazing film. This is like swinging for the fences and being close to hitting a home run or getting a home run on the first try.
That's true. He was a young filmmaker.
Guillermo del Toro's first feature film was Kronos, I believe.
Yeah,
and I think this was like his sixth or seventh feature film.
But that's the interesting thing about these three guys. Del Toro's the oldest of these three, and Iñárritu's the youngest. So I agree with you. I think that Iñárritu was, but that's my point. He was still young, and he was still there's this famous story that Del Toro was introduced by Iñárritu. By Cuarón to Iñárritu. They all kind of, they're Mexican filmmakers. They all kind of knew each other's name. And this is what they say. This kid's name kept popping up everywhere in like the indie film festival scene. So we started paying attention to him. And when Amores Perros was being cut to be distributed, Del Toro literally wrote Iñárritu and told him, this is the famous story. He wrote Del Toro and said, "It sucks. It could be better, but it sucks. Right now, it sucks. The way it's cut, it sucks, and you're gonna have a really bad time." And Iñárritu was pissed because Del Toro is one of his heroes, was one of his heroes. And Iñárritu said, "Well, he literally, I'm not even bullshitting. I'm paraphrasing, but he said, "Well, why don't you come fix it, you fat fuck?" Like that's what he told Del Toro. Was Iñárritu?
Okay.
Yeah, he told Del Toro.
I remember he cut out like 10 minutes, I think, worth of footage.
Yeah, Del Toro literally showed up on Iñárritu's doorstep and crashed on his couch for weeks so that they could cut out. It was 20 minutes, so they cut out 20 minutes of the film, and that's the version we see now. So that's kind of the famous story of Amores Perros and how it kind of again solidified that side of things. Look, the performances are great. But I think that compared to and the direction is great, and it's a good film. And if you're a dog lover, don't watch it because just don't.
It's still a great film. It's still a great metaphor too, essentially for love and all the crazy shit too that's going on. There's a reason why the title is translated to "Love's a Bitch."
And it's funny that you talk about titles because I just want to mention in Pan's Labyrinth, the actual title that it kind of was adopted was El Laberinto del Fauno. And that sounds so much more like
whimsical,
like fantasy, like whimsical kid story.
You're thinking David Bowie, 80s.
Yeah, oh no, not that Labyrinth. No, exactly. They shouldn't have named it that. But anyways, I think Pan's Labyrinth views better, if you're a fan of fantasy, if you're a fan of storytelling the right way, it's Pan's Labyrinth versus Amores Perros. I think Amores Perros is a great art house picture. And it's a good reference his old work. But I think Iñárritu hit his stride when he did films like Babel, like Birdman. I think Iñárritu is finally becoming. I think Iñárritu is finally becoming the guy now. I think he's found his stride. He knows the stories he wants to tell, and he's doing it damn good. He won back-to-back Oscars, man. Like he's a damn good filmmaker. But I don't think that was the case with Amores Perros. I think that came later. And Pan's Labyrinth, that's where Del Toro was cemented. That's where Del Toro was Del Toro. So that's kind of my take on it.
I think for me, it's more about I guess, like I said, they're two very different monster films. So you can't really compare them essentially based on styles and say one's better than the other, because essentially one is told through metaphor and through original and creative fantasy storytelling, and the other is grounded in reality, like we were saying, and it relies mostly on the complexity of these situations. And so, like on the one hand, you can like the fantasy element of Pan's Labyrinth and appreciate it. And but if you want to read deeper into the metaphorical and the religious aspects and the storytelling aspects, it's there. But with Amores Perros, it's trickier because it's essentially grounded in reality, and that's where it's gonna.
That's what I love about the approach to Pan's Labyrinth. Pan's Labyrinth, by the end of the film, you don't know what's real or what's not.
Oh, I know what's real. I know what's real. I do. I knew she died. I knew she died, but I knew she went to the underground.
Well, that's my point. You don't know if she makes it or
Obviously.
not. You don't know. It's the same thing as The Shape of Water. The Shape of Water, you don't know if she makes it or not after being taken away.
They have the ambiguity, but the way it's read, I'm pretty sure it was real. At least it's hinted at. Because otherwise, why would he find the mandrake root under the bed?
Yeah, but that's my point. I think that my argument is it's a better storytelling effort. As far as technical, or as far as fantasy or genre, I don't care. But what I care about is, as a storybook, this film tells the story much more effectively.
I don't know.
Amores Perros is just gritty and raw.
Because I think Amores Perros has the ambiguity too, the aspect too. Because remember how it ends with Chivito, leaving that phone or that voicemail on his phone, but then he's leaving, and so you're wondering where he's going now because he's skipping town. But then there's not really any key answers to everything that's going on. You don't know anything that's going to go on with any of the stories, like Octavio and what's her face?
Well, I think Amores Perros had this "Y tu mamá también" book ending. Like it's a bookend of like, that's life, tough shit. That's life. You don't know what happens to these guys, but tough shit. And Pan's Labyrinth had this like, it's either a beautiful ending because there was a form of escapism, or it's a terrible ending because she didn't make it. It's left to the interpreter. Yeah.
Yoko, do you have a final question for each person to kind of help edge out your thoughts, or are you going to call it?
I know everybody's usually going to pick Pan's Labyrinth, so I totally understand why. So, I'm a huge fan.
No. You never know, man. You never know.
No, trust me, Jonathan. When it comes to these types of films, I am defending Pan's Labyrinth in this particular scenario. And again, guys, the Tower Crown is not about which film is better. It's about which film is the better in this scenario. Is it's completely subjective.
It's a shame you guys didn't pick Babel, because I finally figured out the damn ending to that story.
Babel was good.
It was fantastic, but I don't know why I woke up one random night and I was like, I finally got it.
Yeah. The ending was fantastic. Brad Pitt was one of my favorite performances of Brad Pitt, honestly, in Babel. And one of my favorite Iñárritu films. But I'm more of a Birdman man, dude. Birdman's my jam. I love Birdman.
Birdman, I applaud more for the cinematic and the technical aspects of it, not really for the story as much.
The story
as much. It's because I feel like the stories are his weaker aspects.
You're weak.
No. My point was, Jonathan, that when it comes to films, well, you know what? I'll let Yokomoto give his verdict before I say this.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so for each of you, how does your movie, since we're talking about foreign dramas, how does your movie better represented the country that it came from?
Ooh.
As in, like, Amores Perros represented Mexico.
Interesting.
And Pan's Labyrinth represented Spain. So tell me, how
essentially, like I was saying before, Amores Perros was also a social commentary on, the culture of Mexico City at the time. But I mean, as far as as far as representing Mexico itself, it was showing you kind of the rundown, but also showing like the perspective from the social class and the lower class, but also giving you the perspective of how it interacts with the higher class, like with the couple having an affair who Chivito has to actually has to kidnap the guy who's getting paid off, who's paying to kill his brother. And it was showing you, you know, essentially how everybody's kind of competing for like this elitist status, and also trying to kind of rise to the top, especially with Octavio, you know, doing these dogfights, and then what's it called, Daniel also giving up his family to live with a supermodel. So it's essentially showing it's essentially showing the rise for wealth and what's essentially considered, you know, like the top of the mountain, essentially, for what people consider, you know, you're a success in life, essentially.
I think Amores Perros was just raw. I think it was just raw in general. And representing Mexico, for me, it was the dialogue. I think the dialogue, Amores Perros was one of the first instances, and I know I'm batting for Amores Perros in this representation, but
switched it up. Yeah, we'll go for it.
No, it's fine. I just wanted to say that the dialogue for me was one of the first times I accurately saw genuine Mexican dialogue.
It was also the camera work, I think, that worked it well too, because it's funny because these both have the same cinematographer, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And so with Amores Perros, you get that hard hit, that handheld documentary style, handheld cinematography with the washed out looks, and then with Pan's Labyrinth, you get the more you get a lot of
floating camera.
You get a lot of tracking shots and a lot of you get a lot of fluidity with the camera.
Now, as far as Pan's Labyrinth go, what's interesting is it's a Mexican filmmaker, a Mexican director, telling a period piece. This film takes place in 1944, which is an interesting time in the history of Spain. It's during what's known as Francoist Spain,
the Franco regime.
So the Franco regime, in short, in a nutshell, it's when the military was running the country. And when the military had the power, almost a dictatorship that almost resembled Hitler. I'm not even bullshitting. So
yeah, they actually were with Hitler, actually.
Yeah. So by that same token, this is what the backdrop of this film. This is where we see the officers really controlling the state and the style and what's going on. And let me just put it to you this way: this film, I love that it uses this backdrop, and I love that both films are social commentaries on that country's current state. But Pan's Labyrinth, what I love about it is it's about constricting. So if you know anything about communism and you know anything about dictatorships, I'm going to constrict my country's ability to be free in this or this aspect. And in this particular thing, the little girl was looking for an escapism. It was looking for something freeing that didn't reflect her current state around her. So the idea of creatures and fantasy opened up her world.
And you know what? I'll give you something too, since you did it for Amores Perros. I think what I found one of the most fascinating metaphors was when she's telling the story to the baby brother in the womb about the rose on top of the mountain, and essentially how to get there you have to go through all these vines that are these poisonous thorns, and who's a metaphor for though? Captain Vidal. Because he's essentially going for immortality, and he's so concerned with time and making sure that he secured his legacy. So the rose at the top of the mountain is essentially his son, and making sure that he's reaching that immortality,
that he lives. That he lives, and ultimately I agree. I think, but to answer Yokomoto's question, it's a representation of the time using story elements to justify why this little girl lives in these times. It's almost like the little girl in it's almost like Schindler in Schindler's List. You know, it's almost like what he did in a terrible time. You know, and it's what this film really represents is the terrible time that was happening in this farm, even in this rural land that wasn't even the main city of our story. But it was overtaken by officers that were trying to constrict the characters. So I think it's a better representation of that time.
I think on that we're inching towards the 2-hour mark.
Yeah.
So Yoko,
just out of curiosity,
debate.
Carlos. Yeah. Just out of curiosity, do you consider Captain Vidal one of the greatest villains of all time? Because he's in my top 5 for sure.
Yeah,
and I know a lot of people don't, but he's such a fantastic villain.
I think Captain Vidal is like. Look, let me put it to you this way. I think this is my final thought on Pan's Labyrinth. I think Pan's Labyrinth is Guillermo del Toro's Inglourious Bastards. I think that's what this film is. Not just because of the context, but
But you consider Shape of Water his Pulp Fiction or Reservoir Dogs?
No, Shape of Water is like is so much more beautiful than that. It has so much more substance for me. It's like a musical without the music is what Shape of Water is to me. But anyways, Pan's Labyrinth to me is Del Toro's Inglourious Bastards, but told in a much more beautiful, charming way. That's what Pan's Labyrinth is to me.
With that Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz kind of vibe.
Exactly. Yeah, the fantasy whimsical element. Yeah.
All right, Yoko. Exciting debate. We need a winner.
Drum roll. From the other. How about from the other hosts? Do you have any?
Yeah. Anybody have anything else on either of these two films? Yeah.
I hated both of them. They're terrible films. Nobody should really watch them. I mean,
clearly the winners should be Children of Men.
They're the reason there's a death in cinema.
Esto Mamá También was clearly the winner here. Okay.
By the way, which we're gonna talk about. This is my Tu Mamá También criteria.
Oh, dude, I love
we gotta have it.
In my head, I'm like, oh, when you show me all these things, I'm like, oh yeah, here it is on my list on Netflix.
God.
I only do that, Jonathan, because I'm a big advocate on this podcast.
My ass doesn't have a DVD player though, so I am too, but my ass doesn't have a DVD player, so
okay.
Yeah. All right, Yokomoto, or anybody else?
Right.
Sorry, anybody else? Anything else?
They're both fantastic films, regardless.
They're both you can't go wrong. You know, I mean, both of them.
Yeah.
Either one's going to be a really interesting raw interpretation of like the times and the people of, you know, like the Mexico City culture, and then the other one's going to be this wonderful, beautiful kind of like metaphorical analysis.
Yeah, they're both,
for like,
they're both definitely my top 10 films.
So I think you can't go wrong with either one, but it's always fun to kind of like bring it here where we can talk about both of them head to head to see the highlights of each film and what it has compared to other films and all that.
Yep.
So yeah.
All right, Mr.
Right. So the winner is
Amores Perros.
Amores Perros.
Wow.
Winner.
Margin.
Damn.
Slight margin
Nominated
there,
13 times and won 15 times. Amores Perros. Beautiful.
Yeah, it was a close one. But what kind of brought the scales up for me there was on how it represented better Mexico than Pan did for Spain.
Well, what's funny too is that Iñárritu did get a chance to represent Spain with Beautiful later on.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Which I think is like his second best film, or second or third best.
Yeah, and I do, especially like me as being a Latin, and you, Carlos, I know you are Latin as well.
I think we all are.
I just had this like kind of nudge every time that you said Iñárritu. Like you always said it like the American way, Iñárritu.
Iñárritu.
Like, no, you're Mexican. You know how to say Iñárritu.
Oh my gosh. Well,
you gotta say like,
so
you gotta say like a
like,
novella.
oh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Better. Even better.
it's like the Scorsese debate. Most people say Scorsese. I say Scorsese because that's the correct way, and I agree.
More like Scorsese, am I right, guys?
Wow. But Iñárritu, that's just how.
Like this bird.
Whatever. Yeah, but you're right. All right.
Wow.
No, but I just thought in the arguments, at least in the actual representation of the country, Amores Perros had a better arguments there than Pan's.
Okay. Well, fair enough. Yeah, I mean they're both fantastic pictures, guys. Check them out. I don't doubt that at some point we'll tackle both of these on the podcast if somebody requests them. But yeah, cool. Well, you know what? You heard it here again. We're inching to the 2-hour mark. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Jonathan, for being a special guest on this episode. We appreciate your input as a lover of cinema.
Thank you guys for having me on again. I appreciate it, and I look forward to your next invite if you guys ever decide to. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Hey,
Guys, check out Cinema Paradiso. I mean, check out all the films we talked about today, but Cinema Paradiso, you can find it on HBO Max, Amazon Prime.
Beautiful film. You won't regret it.
You won't regret it. Buy the Blu-ray if you can. The Blu-ray's around. It's not easy to get, but if you can get it, it's good to have in your collection. I know I'm happy to have it in my collection. I tell Luis Anchondo, the one that introduced this film to me, every time I see him, I swear I tell him, thank you for introducing Cinema Paradiso to me, because I love it so much. So again, thank you, Luis, for introducing it to me. It's one of my favorite films of all time. Check it out. Again, if you guys have any comments, concerns, anything, guys, or suggestions for films that we should do on the show, shoot us a message at Tower Productions or In the Mind of Yoko. If you have any suggestions for the Tower Crown, Mr. Yokomoto is working hard to make sure we have a really good debate every show. So make sure to vote on his page and on the Tower Productions page. We always share it from the page. So make sure to check it out. Make sure to tell everybody to listen to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere you find podcasts, or check out the video element on YouTube and Facebook. I want to thank my lovely panel here. Thank you guys for talking cinema with me, man. This was fun.
Yeah, thank you. Always a good episode. Hanging out with you guys, talking.
Do we know? Can we tease the next episode? Do we know what's next?
Yes, we do.
Yeah,
I actually forgot the name of it, but we're going to be having another special guest.
Lone Wolf.
Yeah. Lone Wolf McQuaid. We're gonna do Lone Wolf McQuaid with.
It's gotta be the most awesome name ever.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, we Lone Wolf McQuaid. We're gonna do the Robert Olguin. He actually sent us a message and was like, "Hey man, you guys should do this. Got a lot of El Paso history. Got a lot of El Paso kind of nudges. It was shot in El Paso and stuff like that. So we're gonna be doing Lone Wolf McQuaid with Mr. Robert Olguin. It should be exciting, man. It's also kind of a classic picture, classic in a lot of people's eyes as well. So
tune in for that.
Stay tuned for that. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to keep sharing the podcast and keep watching cinema. Thank you.